Hello, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Vizone here. Today, we are going to work on sequence of events in an informational text. Now, as third graders, you are pros at identifying the sequence of events in a fictional story. For instance, if I asked you to tell me the sequence of events in Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears, you would be able to tell me that, first Goldilocks got lost in the woods. Then she went in the house, and so on and so forth. But now, as we're shifting to reading a lot more informational texts, it is a different strategy to find the sequence of events in an article, or maybe if you're reading a big biography about somebody. So there are some things that are the same and other things that are a little bit different when you're looking for the sequence of events. So just like we did with fiction, when we're sequencing and we're talking about the sequence of events in a nonfiction text, you will also come across some sequencing clue words. So I always tell my students, let's become detectives, and you are all going to become detectives, and you're going to get out your magnifying glass. And as I'm reading, one of the things I would like for you to keep a close lookout for, and I would also like you to listen for some sequencing clue words. And when you go back to the Google slide presentation, I think it's slide 7. I'm going to put a big chart there with a whole bunch of sequencing clue words, so you can use this later in the lesson. When we're reading informational texts, one of the other tips that I like to tell my students is to always be on the lookout for dates, times, things happen. So today I'm going to read to you this quick little article about Amelia Earhart. And as I'm reading, I want you to listen and I want you to look for two things. I would like for you to look for some sequencing clue words, and I would also like for you to be on the lookout for some dates, okay? So I always like to identify the title of the article first, and this article is titled Amelia Earhart. So I'm going to read the first paragraph to you out loud. And again, I want you to be looking and listening for some sequencing clue words and some dates or times. Amelia Earhart is one of the most famous pilots in history. She was born in 1897. Amelia's parents did not want her to fly airplanes, but Amelia had a dream. When she was in her 20s, she became a pilot. Then, in 1922, Amelia bought her first plane. I'm going to stop at the end of this paragraph because as I was reading, I was able to see some dates, and I did see one clue word. So the first date that I came across here was 1897, and I'm just writing it over here on the side so that I remember to come back to it later, so I can put it in my graphic organizer when I'm done with the whole article. Here is a clue word, then. So actually, I have it twice here on my little chart. So then is a sequencing clue word, which is followed by another date, 1922. And that is when Miss Earhart bought her first airplane. Very cool. So let's continue on to the second paragraph. Again, your job is still the same. You're looking and you are listening for some sequencing clue words and dates, times, things of that nature. In 1928, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. But she was not the pilot. She was a passenger. Amelia wanted to be famous for actually flying an airplane. So she decided to plan another flight. This time she would fly around the world. In 1937, Amelia started her journey. She flew more than 22,000 miles before her plane disappeared over the Pacific Ocean. The plane was never found. When people heard the news, they were sad. Amelia was not able to finish her journey, but she inspired many others to follow their dreams. Well, okay, so back to our sequencing clue words and our dates. So we have a couple dates here in the second paragraph. And here we have 1928, and that's when she became the first woman passenger to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. I had to reread that a couple. And then here, 1937, she started her own journey, right? This is when she said to herself, I want to be the first woman to fly around the world. So that's what I'm going to do. And she did that in 1937. Again, this is an informational text, so it has a lot of dates, not as many clue words, but that's okay. It's important to look for both things. So I am going to go over here to our graphic organizer. Okay, the teacher example. Here, move me over here. All right, so we know, and I have the story here in front of me too. So we know that Amelia Earhart was born in 1897. So I'm going to put that. It's also important to know that, not to know, but to remember when you're writing in a graphic organizer, or in this case, we're typing, it's important to remember you don't need to have complete sentences. It doesn't need to be perfect. So we know first she was born. And then when we reread, and in 1922, she bought her first airplane. What was the next big date? 1928. This is important. She was the first woman passenger. She wasn't the pilot, she was the passenger to fly over the Atlantic Ocean. And then that's when she said, you know what? I don't want to be the first passenger. I mean, she was the first woman passenger, but she said, I'm going to do something bigger and better. And that happened in 1937 when she decided she was going to be the first woman to fly around the world. But her plane went down in the Pacific Ocean. So let's just let my computer catch up. Okay, good. All right. So here, I took that informational article that we read about Amelia Earhart, and we read it. We listened for our sequencing clue words. We looked for the dates, and here I moved them over and we organized them in chronological order in the graphic organizer. So what your job is going to be next is you are going to read an article about rescuing sea lions, and as you're reading it, you're going to do what I was doing. You are going to circle dates, you're going to highlight clue words, and you're going to save your work. And then after you're done reading the article and identifying the clue words and the dates, you are going to think of 4 events that happened in your life this past year. So far it's 2020. So think of 4 things that have happened in 2020 so far. You're going to use the same graphic organizer that I just used to put those events in the order that they have happened so far. And then you're going to write about the events, adding some interesting details. And again, On slide 7, I am going to put the chart in there with different sequencing clue words. And so you are not locked into using first, next, next, next. You can use any of the clue words from the chart, the sequencing chart. So be my guest. So let's go back to here. And you have this example. So if you continue and you start your work and you still have some questions about what to do when you're writing, please reach out to your teacher, and you can rewatch this video when you're ready if you have any more questions. So good luck next time.